All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Everything Cultural Podcast. Today, we'll be doing a preview and prediction with Nick here on Vanderbilt in Alabama. Game of the week going down in Tuscaloosa. Tide coming off a big win against Georgia. Once again, Vanderbilt remains undefeated, creeping towards the top 15. 10.5 point line in favor of the Tide. 56.5 is the total. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Everything started with this Vanderbilt offense. This was a relatively unknown team last year until they upset number one Alabama, Nick, in Nashville, and that really jump-started this whole movement of them being almost impossible to defeat. Every game they played was incredibly close. They covered like crazy on a non-stop basis. This team has really taken the college football world by storm under Clark Leah, and I think the thing about 2025 is they're even better than they were last year, because I didn't think this offense for Vanderbilt was all that good last year. Well, in 2025, it is really good. And I know they're playing some weaker opponents, in the group of four in the FCS, but they also put a clinic on against South Carolina. I know Lenora Sellers was down for that game, but they were still able to pull away to a multi-digit victory. And then at Virginia Tech, that was basically a pick 'em on the odds, and they won that one by 24 points with almost 500 yards of offense. So I think this is a great group. I think the rushing attack is significantly upticked. Last year they really grinded opponents down. They were able to get in the third and shorts a lot, and the production wasn't all that impressive. But this year it's a lot different. They're also efficient and explosive. This is an offense led by Cedric Alexander in the backfield, 243 and 4 scores. Kylan Young came over from New Mexico State. He's been a nice explosive runner. Jamel Zell Lassiter, he had a 44-yard rushing touchdown against South Carolina. So they got numerous different guys getting involved, and this rushing attack has been highly impressive. Of course, Diego Pavia, Nick, this is one of the top rising players in college football from a personality standpoint. His play, though, we saw him back at New Mexico State, though, put on shows as a dual-threat player, and he's doing it now in the SEC. 1,200 yards passing, another near 300 rushing with 15 total touchdowns. Pavia, of course, this is a guy that got a lot of publicity over the last, how many ever months since they beat Bama. It was an interesting offseason for him. I think there's a lot of things he said that potentially rubbed people the wrong way, and I think this Alabama defense that's coming off, a relatively good game against Georgia is going to be looking for some redemption. Now, I don't think this rushing defense for Alabama is all that great. Week one against FSU, they had struggles. Against Georgia, they gave up almost 7 yards per carry, a lot of explosive runs. And that's the biggest concern of Alabama, Nick. This is a team that they were able to get the W against Georgia, but I didn't really see the improvements I was hoping for in key areas, and that includes this run defense. LT Overton's a boss. Deonze Pierre, hoping he can be fully healthy for this one. Q Rasaw as well. I don't know how much he played against Georgia. Kelby Collins, Tim Keenan came back and played well in about 40 snaps. So we still have a lot of guys who are highly impressive on this defensive front. Interesting game here, Nick, because they're looking for redemption. This Vandy offense really put on a clinic against Bama last year, but I don't know if they've made enough improvements to completely slow them down here in this matchup.
This ain't your daddy's Vanderbilt team, and a lot of that is because of the offense and what they've been able to do with Diego Pavia and revolutionize this team. This team is playing with some serious fight and some grit, and Vanderbilt is not the pushover they used to be. I always had kind of sneaky suspicion that in the NIL era, Vanderbilt would be a competitive football team because of the fact that they're a private institution with a massive war chest and a great alumni base and a really big bankroll, but I figured it would take 5-10 years for that to really start to show itself, and I'm not entirely putting this all in NIL. I think it's certainly part of the puzzle for Vanderbilt, but I figured this was a program that would develop and no longer be a bottom feeder in the SEC. They would pass some of those other teams that just don't have the NIL war chest that a private university in a city like Nashville could have. And Vanderbilt is continuously quietly impressing me. Clark Leah seems to be a home run hire who is building this program and turning them into I can't believe I'm saying this, but an SEC powerhouse right now at that level, a top 25 program that is playing phenomenal football. Diego Pavia is a great story. He obviously went viral after beating Alabama with his interview with Alyssa Lang after the game this past week against Utah State. He had a good moment where him and her were singing the alma mater together, and he's just a funny guy, and he obviously is getting a lot of attention in the media, and he's having a great season, so it makes sense that he's getting that attention. 74% comp rate, 1,200 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. Looks really good so far. Leads the team in rushing as well, nearly 300 yards, 2 scores, 6.1 yards per attempt. That's the biggest concern if you're an Alabama fan, is that Alabama has not been good against defending against the quarterback run, and Pavia can certainly do so. He absolutely thrashed them last year, and you would think that he could do it again. He's a really talented quarterback that's really solid, hard to scheme against, and really difficult to kind of game plan and build your defense around. Alabama had absolute nightmares against him last year, and there's no reason to think why it can't happen again. I think Cedric Alexander, Young, Lassiter are all really good backs. You got 3 backs right there with over 140 yards rushing. Really impressive numbers there. I think they've been really solid. The passing attack, they're relying on the tight end Stowers, which makes sense. You figured they would do so. He's got over 300 yards and 2 scores. Richardson, Sherrell, Hoskins are all getting involved as well. Sherrell is a really big deep play threat, who's been getting a ton of targets, 5 touchdowns in the red zone as well. So they're trying to get him involved when necessary, which I think is really solid to see. This Vanderbilt offense, 49 points per game, 6.49 yards per attempt on the ground, 7.85 yards per play, 18 rushing touchdowns. The numbers are just phenomenal, right? There is no sugarcoating it. The numbers are good. They're beating bad teams. They're beating good teams. They're beating okay teams. They're winning on the road. They're winning at home. Back-to-back wins at Virginia Tech and South Carolina. 2 pretty tough environments when it's all said and done. Now you're heading into a tough spot at Bryant-Denny Stadium, right? The belly of the beast. This is an Alabama team that plays really good at home. They're hard to beat at home. So this is the ultimate test really for Alabama. As for the Alabama defense, it's night and day from what you saw in Tallahassee. They have looked a lot better, and they had an incredibly strong second half against Georgia in that big win. 16.5 points per game, 4.34 yards per attempt, 5.05 yards per play. The secondary has been really strong and has been a key part of this team. You're seeing a better improvement out of Bray Hubbard, who forced a huge key fumble early in that game that led to points, 22 total tackles for him, 2 TFLs, 2 picks, and a pass breakup plus the forced fumble. He has been really solid. Deontay Lawson has been that big leader at linebacker that you hoped he would be, 23 total tackles, 2 TFLs, a pass breakup. You're seeing more. Obviously, you need more pressure, though, right? You need to find a way to get more sacks. The secondary has been good, but not incredible. Damani Jackson has been a little bit shaky at times. Some other pieces have been shaky in the secondary here. This is a 2-headed monster you're trying to face from Vanderbilt because they have incredible balance, and they really can dial up a lot on the ground and through the air. You have to stay disciplined. You have to stay smart. Avoid penalties. Don't put yourself in tough situations. Last year, Vanderbilt got off with a ton of 3rd down conversions, a ton of 4th down conversions in that game in Nashville that really put them in a good spot. You have to get off the field if you're this Alabama defense. You have to get stops early and often to put your offense in a good position.
Yeah, some more notes on this Vanderbilt offense implemented by Tim Beck. A lot of RPOs. They love the pistol. Lots of variations out of that. The QB run game. Inside runs by the running backs, slants to Junior Sherrill. They get the tight ends involved. A lot of 2 tight end sets, very deadly. The way they sneak them out, it's almost like you forget about them. That happened last year of Eli Stowers, Bama. They just forgot about him often. He had 100 plus in that one. 12 of 18 on 3rd down last year against the Tide. And they love to live in these 3rd and shorts, really grind the game out and make things boring. They're 4th in CFB right now, 60% on 3rd down. They only had 1 game of 200 plus rushing last year. They already have 4 in 5 contests. So I'm a firm believer that this offense is significantly improved because they were playing weak opponents last year too, and they were putting up great production. And on one more thing on Diego Pavia, this is a guy who has seemingly improved with his downfield passing. He used to have a bit of a long windup. I think he's developed some more power in his downfield throws. He did have an underthrown ball though late in the game last week. It was an open go route, did not arrive to the receiver, and it was picked off. So the improvements have only reached to a certain degree, and I think that's going to give Alabama chances one-on-one, Nick, and that could be a great opportunity for them to make plays. I'm not fully convinced these corners are all that good. Damani Jackson, I think this guy's just abysmal. He gets beat often, got beat for a touchdown last week. Zabian Brown, he's all right. He's more consistent, I'd say. And the Dijon Lee gets on the field a lot as well. So I think there's opportunities for Vanderbilt here, Nick. And again, they're just so tough to stay out of those 3rd and shorts, and the play calling is just ridiculous because the formations are so wonky. They're tough to scheme for and prepare against. I can't wait to see some of the trick plays that they have. This secondary's got to be disciplined to defend against because they're coming.
Yeah, they know they're coming. They're going to try and dial up a whole lot. Tim Beck's going to pull out a lot of different things here. Got to be disciplined. I think, that's a big opportunity for Alabama, right? If they can force a turnover, particularly on man-to-man in a situation where a ball is underthrown and jump a route, I think that's their big opportunity, really, is if you can force a turnover or 2. I don't think it's going to come on a fumble. I think it's more likely to come on an interception. Force a turnover or 2 in terms of interception. Get some pressure on Pavia, make him uncomfortable, make him underthrow a ball, and that will give you a big opportunity to bail out your defense, or bail out your offense, that is, and put yourself in a good position here and really have your defense perform well. I think you have to try and find a way to force turnovers. If Alabama is going to win this game comfortably, they're going to have to force 2 or 3 turnovers and really put Vanderbilt in a tough spot where they're going to shoot themselves themselves in the foot. It's very difficult to scheme against this Vanderbilt offense. It's a nightmare, right? There's no other way to put it. They turned themselves into a nightmare to play, and seeing Vanderbilt on the schedule isn't the free win that you win by 50 points anymore. This is a game where you have to look at and say to yourself, this offense can go stride for stride with just about anybody in the country, if not everybody in the country. It's a tough scheme, and I think this is a thing they're going to be working on all week. Kane Womack obviously has a ton of work to do with this defense. He's a pretty good defensive coordinator who's got to sit down and put together himself a very strong defensive game plan here, because I don't know if they're going to be able to do what they did last year and have success here. They lost a close game last year on the road in Nashville. The defense has to be a lot better than they were that day.
And move to the other side of things, the Bama offense against the Doors defense. For Alabama, coming off a game against Georgia, they were able to put up 24 points in that first half. Started the game with back-to-back 14-play drives where they could not be stopped on third down. That ended up being a big strong suit for them, 13-19 total. And then they cashed in on a fumble by Georgia, and then they also had a quick touchdown drive right before the half that extended the lead back out to 10, which ended up being the final points for them in a very monumental moment in that game. It's interesting, Nick, because in week one you saw a sluggish effort from the offense. First half against Georgia saw an elite performance, especially from its quarterback and his pass catchers. And in the second half, they went really cold. So we're still struggling to find consistency, but I think for the most part, this is still considered a very lethal passing attack. Ty Simpson's been very accurate, very patient, showing great command of the offense, especially on the road, with his ability to make sure guys are lined up properly and everyone knows their assignments. They're flawless in that regard. And Gurmy Bernard and Ryan Williams continue to make great plays. Ryan Williams had another monumental drop. They still scored on that drive, so it didn't end up hurting them in the end. But this is a theme now, Nick, where this guy can't stop dropping plays, and they're big ones too. Isaiah Horton had a nice touchdown, leading the team with 65 yards. So this is a very versatile Bama passing attack. For them, though, their rushing attack just does not seem to be there. 117 yards. They only had, I think there's about 3 carries of 10-plus yards, and one of those was a Caden Proctor, whatever you want to call that play, where they've got him out wide. So the run game's just not been there for Bama, and it hasn't been for a long time. You're going up against a Vanderbilt defense that's been a little bit prone to explosive plays, mainly through the air. They struggled early against Utah State. They got burned in the red zone, a 2 tight end set with some motion caused the inline tight end to be wide open. They led 5 pass touchdowns total in that game to the Aggies. Zone defense is just allowing some big voids, and I don't know if these athletes are going to be able to stand tall and man against Alabama either. And that's the big thing for the Crimson Tides. They're just living and dying by this passing attack, outmanning their opponent, and they were able to do that against Georgia. So nothing really convinces me that Vanderbilt's going to be able to do it. I think C.J. Hurd at safety is a phenomenal player. He's been great in coverage, great against the run. In this front 7, you've had guys really emerge. Kadori Sador has been phenomenal. Miles Caper's been an elite producer at defensive end. There's guys here that are certainly impressive, and I think at linebacker, Brian Longwell is a very good player. This is a team that's got a nice scheme. Of course, Clark Leah is a defensive-minded head coach, so maybe he'll bring some wrinkles to the table in this one. But this matchup doesn't sit well for Vanderbilt, Nick, but Bama, you can expect them to probably be one-dimensional once again, and that's just where the problem lies.
Yeah, they're in a one-dimensional team, but I think it's a one dimension that they're getting right now, and they're getting themselves in a good spot. So yes, I think you have to find a rushing attack if you have aspirations of going deep in the college football playoff. And I saw some positivity out of Jam Miller and Riley as well on the ground. I did see a little bit of positivity out of Kevin Riley, but you're right. They got to be able to run the ball a little bit better here. I think that's certainly an issue that will resolve itself as the season goes on. 3.9 yards per attempt on the ground is not good enough for Alabama, but Ty Simpson, welcome to the Heisman conversation. He had a phenomenal day. He's just absolutely putting himself in a great position. He wasn't the problem in Tallahassee. He was a little uncomfortable, obviously, on the road, and that was a tough spot for him in his first career real start, but I think he had shown me a lot of positive things in there where I wasn't worried about him. I figured it was the defense that if they could figure it out, things could be a lot better for Alabama, and Ty Simpson was absolutely dealing against Georgia. Certainly was dialed in that first half. 70% comp rate, 1,100 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 0 picks. He has been absolutely phenomenal. Ryan Williams, the drop in the first drive was bad, but I think he got himself comfortable and he made a couple really big catches in that game. Had a really huge catch on third down where he got blown up on the play as well. Didn't drop the ball, held on to it, which was a very important thing there. And that was a big third down conversion late in the fourth quarter. So I saw a lot of positivity out of Ryan Williams. He is still a great player. Jeremy Bernard's the best player on this Alabama team, full stop. 310 yards receiving for him, 4 touchdowns. Isaiah Horton getting involved in the offense, I think, is a very key thing to see going forward. He was involved. Same thing with Brooks. He got involved as well. He had a couple nice catches against that Georgia team. Some of the play calling was phenomenal in that game. I really liked what they were able to dial up. Ryan Grubb had a great day. That third down play call to seal the game there in the fourth quarter was absolutely phenomenal. That wheel route that ended up being what they ended up cashing in on. Getting back a great back there in Jam Miller, who was really solid in the passing game. I think was a good start. He'll get more comfortable and he'll be able to be a key impact. And obviously that Caden Proctor play was absolutely hysterical and phenomenal. Really cool to see them pull that trick out there. You can't tackle that guy. I mean, what a great play call. Really fun to see that. I'm curious to see if they have anything else in their bag of tricks. 38 points per game so far, 6.57 yards per play, 15 pass touchdowns, 0 interceptions as a team. Very happy with that. As for Vanderbilt, the defense is pretty good, right? This is a good unit, 17.2 points per game, 3 yards per attempt on the ground, 4.65 yards per play. So they're really good run defense, but they're not a good pass defense. I think that's why Alabama's not been able to force turnovers really in the secondary. CJ Hurd's been a good player so far. He has one of those 3 picks that I mentioned, as does Brian Longwell. But the linebacker, those 2 guys are the top pieces for this team. Hurd, 23 total tackles, Longwell, 18. But I just don't think the secondary for Vanderbilt will be able to keep up with this passing attack. If Ty Simpson has any time in the pocket like he did early in that game against Georgia where there was no pressure on him, he can create, he'll pick you apart, he'll go through his reads, he'll find a guy and really have a good moment there. There's a lot of depth in this Bama wide receiving room of the guys that are stepping up, like Horton being more involved in the passing attack and being a big option. Brooks as well, the tight ends getting involved in Cuevas, and then the freshman Caleb Edwards, who was involved as well as a good passing threat. This profiles to be a big opportunity for the Alabama passing attack to have a strong day. I think the rushing attack will eventually come around here. I just think they need to play the right opponent to get themselves back into a groove. Vanderbilt will stop the run, will certainly put Alabama in tough situations, but if they play like they did on third down, which is obviously hard to replicate throughout an entire game, again, I think they will be really solid here. Look for the play calling to be smart and opportunistic on third down and put this team in a good spot here. I think Ty Simpson's dealing, and I have full confidence in him.
The offensive line put on a clinic against Georgia. Only 2 pressures allowed, not even close to getting any pressure. Even Wilkin Formby had a great game. That's how you know they're playing at a high level. A lot of size on the interior, of course. The Vanderbilt run defense has been elite this year. I've played not that many opponents that are tough, of course. South Carolina, Virginia Tech. I think if you're poor, they could probably run the ball on you. So it was nice to see them step up in that regard. One thing I think is a big key is Vanderbilt has 9 takeaways this year, including 4 against the Gamecocks. Bama has 0 giveaways, Nick. They're not even close to turning the ball over either. Not many balls have been in harm's way from Simpson, and the running backs have been doing a great job of keeping it in their chest. That's very interesting. I think that's one thing that Alabama's excelling at, is not turning the ball over, and that was a bit of a problem for this team last year, especially at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think it's really good to have that huge turnover margin there. It's really smart to be careful and not, put the ball in harm's way. It's really smart. When you look what they're doing so far, they're really good. The turnover margin, +7 on the season is really good. 0 given up, 7 total gain. I think this is a big potential swing here. If Alabama can force turnovers, like I mentioned when I was talking about the Alabama defense against the Vanderbilt offense, if they can prevent turnovers, that's a huge win right there. If they end up getting 2 or 3 turnovers and they have none on their own, that's a massive swing and will put this in a great position for Alabama to win this game and ultimately cover that spread that is a two touchdown spread, depending on what you're looking at, depending on what line you get out. Maybe it's a little bit closer to 10 points. It's still double digits. That turnover margin will be a huge factor in this game. If Vanderbilt forces turnovers, they will be extremely competitive and they can win this game. If Alabama forces turnovers, they will run away with this one.
Final analysis and the prediction. Last year I got burned a lot, and even this year early on, by betting against Vanderbilt. I'm done. I'm not doing it no more, Nick. This team has clearly proven they're incredibly hard to defeat, even if there is a giant talent gap. The offensive scheme they run is just too difficult to contain throughout 60 minutes. And if you want to hush this, rowdy home crowd, they have the capability of doing it with their run game. That easily puts makes the game boring. That's what you want to do if you're Vanderbilt. And they did a great job last year of running the ball, being physical, staying ahead of the sticks, and then flipping out to their tight ends who were uncovered, or just being able to run for first downs. And Alabama, I think they still struggle when it comes to the run. I think their secondary is still a bit of a iffy problem. And again, their own run game is not all that great. I think they'll probably have another field day throwing the football. But if you're not going to be getting an edge in the time of possession, Nick, that's going to allow Vanderbilt to keep this one close. And I wonder how nervous DeBoer will be if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, because you lost to this team last year. You never lose to Vanderbilt. It's probably the most embarrassing thing that could happen to this program, is to lose to the Commodores. So I definitely wonder what kind of coaching decisions will be made if this is a close game, because he's absolutely going to be nervous, Nick. I can tell you he's not. But if you're facing, you're staring down the barrel of potentially losing to this team a second time in a row, you're going to be antsy. So I think this will be a close game. I think Vanderbilt will have some success. I think the Bama passing attack, though, should be able to keep this game at arm's length, and it should allow them to get a victory. But I think Vanderbilt's going to cover, and this one's really exciting, quite frankly. What's your opinion on some of those takes?
Crazy to say that College Game Day is going to a game between Vanderbilt and Alabama. Never thought I'd be able to say that. Even back, I believe it was 2017, where Vanderbilt got off to a hot start and they were 3-0, and they hosted, Alabama and Nashville. There's a lot of hype around that game. Alabama ended up winning that game 59-0. But again, this is not your dad's Vanderbilt team. This is a Vanderbilt team that is competitive. They're a team that's going to fight every single week, and they're going to give you hell no matter what. Here, I think Alabama's in a good spot. Against the spread in his career at home, Kalen DeBoer is 7-2. He's not lost at home so far in his career at Alabama. Alabama very seldomly loses at home since 2019. Only 2 losses at home. I would know because I was there for one of them, and the other one I suffered through as a graduate of the university, alumni of the university. No pick for me as I went to Alabama. This is a team that's very good at Bryant-Denny Stadium, a very tough environment to play in here. Vanderbilt, obviously, they're an incredible story. This is a team that's playing very hard football. They deserve to be in the top 25. They maybe even deserve to be higher than 16, depending on who you ask, considering what they're able to do so far this season. But I think DeBoer's in a good spot here. I think Alabama, as long as they protect the football, that's the biggest key for me. I've said it multiple times this game. Just protect the football. That will be a big situation thing that can help you out here. Tyson's been dealing here. If you can find a way to run the ball, they'll run away with this game, but I don't think they'll be able to do so. The defense has to be smart. Don't get fooled by Pavia. I think, the defensive coordinator has learned his lesson from last year and will be able to scheme up something a little bit different here. I think this team is learning its lesson. Obviously, Alabama's kryptonite in the Kalen DeBoer era and even in the late Saban era was quarterbacks that could run the ball. You saw it time and time again where even in some of those games that they won against those running quarterbacks, it was a nightmare to do, and they struggled in those games. Alabama's not very good against running quarterbacks. They struggled against Vanderbilt last year, obviously, running quarterback, Oklahoma, Florida State. Those are all teams that had quarterbacks that were very mobile, similar to Pavia. So it will be a nightmare for Alabama. I'm certainly not looking forward to this one as a fan, but from a neutral perspective, this should be a phenomenal game going down to ABC at 3:30. I'm excited to see what happens here and excited to see how the rest of the season goes for both these teams.
We're afraid of this episode. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.